Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates, where we still love musicians, but we no longer trust the music industry. I am your co-host, Meg Nikki.
And I am Nikki McKnight.
And this week we are talking about a trilogy that was on my top trilogy Tingly Awards. And Nikki's book of the year is in this trilogy, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So, Nikki...
We've been going back and forth on the name of the series. And today I was like, you know what I should just do is go to Audible and listen to the sample chapter because I know it's going to be mentioned in there. So today we are talking about the Atrous series by N.R. Walker. Not Atrous, not Atrous.
Which is how
Atrous,
we pronounced it.
According to the narrator.
Yeah. On the Tinglies, we pronounced it Atrous. But apparently it is Atrous.
There we go.
Which,
you know
honestly...
what? Legit.
I love the trilogy, and that might be my biggest issue with it, is what the hell is the name of this band?
I think we've talked about this before sometimes with names, especially if they're not North American English names, or if you're reading fantasy, or if they're Gaelic-based names. Thank you, authors, for including pronunciation keys, because I am not worldly enough to understand. But I remember there was something, I think it was for Fourth Wing, because there's the dragon names, and there was an argument on Threads or Instagram, that's not how you pronounce the name of the dragon. And I haven't read it. And people were like, this is what they do in the audiobook. And someone's like, well, the audiobook is wrong. I was like, I don't think that's factually correct. But you know what? Pronounce it how you like. But
right. And that's the lovely thing about reading is that there is, you sort of pronounce it however you pronounce it in your head. Although, do you pronounce words in your head the way that,
no,
because you don't see,
I don't have an inner monologue. I don't have an inner monologue or an inner voice. And I don't read individual words. Yeah. So not quite, but here's the thing. I love seeing those things on Threads that were what is a word that you only ever saw written and you mispronounced it when you were trying to say it. For me, it was segue. Because I used to pronounce it segue. But in my head, I'm oh, it's the same meaning. Mm-hmm. I'm going to segue into something, or I'm going to sieg is another way I thought it was pronounced. I'm going to sieg into the next topic, but aloud, I would say I'm going to segue into the next topic. Yeah. I thought they were just the same thing, and then I was like, oh no, that's actually pronounced very differently.
Yeah, in classical music, I couldn't pronounce fugue for a long time. Oh. And then I had to do it in music class in 7th grade, and I called it a fugu.
Like the fish.
Same, 7th grade, Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and Infinite Sadness came out, and it was melancholy, 2 separate words. And then I remember going into a spelling test and hearing the teacher say melancholy, and I spelled it like Smashing Pumpkins album. And she was like, no, it's melancholy, which is how I pronounced it in my head whenever I was reading it. No, that sad thing is melancholy. That's not melancholy. Why would it be melancholy? So, yeah.
It really does give the word a very different sense, though. Melancholy. Melancholy!
Well,
Atrous.
I would say that Atrous is the melancholy approach to rockstar romance. Before we leap into the analysis, let's talk about the Atrous trilogy. Let's talk about what's going on here. So it's a 3-book series. They are Code Red, Code Blue, Code Name. And you first brought Code Name as a Friends to Lovers conversation that we had during our Friendsgiving month back in November, which sent me running into Kindle Unlimited to read the whole series. And then I turned around and went, actually, I like Code Red better than Code Name. So we sort of landed differently in our favorite books in the trilogy, which I think will be interesting. It is 3 books that follow basically a boy band from the height of their success into obscurity. And so it starts with Code Red. They're on this huge world tour. The system is running. The machine is going. The band members are all on the verge of burnout. They're exhausted. They're overstimulated, but they have to keep going because they've signed on for this, huge international tour. And that one starts with Roscoe is our protagonist and our narrator. And his partner is Maddox, who is I'm going to say the Justin Timberlake of the band.
He's the main singer, the main rapper. He's kind of the figurehead face of the band.
He's the front man, right? So even though it's a 5-member band, you always have that Nick Carter Or what's the one from 98 Degrees? Also a Nick?
Nick Lachey.
Thank you. Right? Like you have sort of like the front, the tenor, the guy who takes the lead vocals. That's Maddox in this case. And so book 1, which is Code Red, sort of walks through Maddox's mental health struggles, which is not what we usually get from a rock star romance. And I'll go through in a little bit and talk about other rock star romances and how this compares and whatever. But it's a really interesting outsider perspective from the manager, from Roscoe, from Maddox's personal manager, of how this machine and institutional pressure, and then the pressure that Maddox is putting on himself to perform at this impossible level of performance, is really taking a toll on his mental health, his physical health, his ability to do his job, and then the criticism coming from the powers that be who are paying his bills. We move on. Code Blue, second book in the trilogy. It's a year later. It's actually released over a year later. So book 1 came out in June 2021. Book 2 came out in in February 2022. So almost a year later. I'm sorry. But it is later in the series. There's a room to breathe between these books. And so at the end of Code Red, at the end of book 1, Maddox says, I don't want to do this forever. This is unsustainable. This is unhealthy. I can't continue like this. So at the end of Code Red, that ending is very much, it's a happy ever after for Maddox and Roscoe, but the choice is, I can't do this forever. Let's plan a farewell tour. Let's do a final album, and then I'm out. And I need to go take care of myself before we go there. I need to go get my shit in order. I need to go to therapy. I need to figure out how to do this in a way that feels like I'm not going to kill myself. Like not in a suicidal way, but in a like physical body is falling apart way. And so by the time we get to Code Blue, we're planning for the farewell tour. We're doing the dance moves. They're back in sort of the production mode after some time off to recover. And that's the story of Jeremy, who is like the JC Chasez or the Brian from the Backstreet Boys. He's sort of like the secondary guy in the lead vocals. And he has taken more of a leadership role because Maddox has had to step away for his own health. And now Jeremy's sort of becoming the front man, and he's getting threats, like death threats. And so this sort of takes on the tone of a romantic suspense book.
Yeah, there's some stalker and some creepy shit coming in for Jeremy.
Yeah, there's some FBI involved, and his partner and the protagonist of this book and the narrator of this book is Steve, who's his bodyguard. Because it's not safe to be famous in this version of this world, which is something that rockstar books don't usually talk about, is the physical safety of fame and of the travel schedule and all that. And Jeremy also is type 1 diabetic and it doesn't tell anyone.
Well, he wasn't diabetic in the beginning. He just had like a blood sugar issue, which then blew up into like a full-blown medical concern for him. Right. Ugh, not taking care of yourselves, boys. Come on.
But, I mean, how can you take care of yourself when the expectations are so demanding? And so by the end of this book, they're sort of realizing the strain that all of this is having on them. And their partners in the books are able to say, okay, I'm supporting you as a human, not just your career, not just the contractual obligations that I'm legally required to help you fulfill. No, I care about you as a person and not just the contract. And then 2 years later, and again, this is released 3 years later. This is released in 2025 to finish the series, which is probably why it showed up in your queue and sort of became your book of the year, is Codename. And that's where 2 of the other band members, who are Blake and Luke, which is hard for me to say, Blake and Luke.
Balake.
Bilake. This is a friends to lovers. This is I've been in love with you the whole time. I haven't been able to tell you. I don't want to ruin the relationship. It's very much a slow burn. And you've talked about this on several episodes now, where it is, needing that separation because they were in forced proximity, but not recognizing the truth of their feelings for each other until 2 years after the fallout and they sort of have to separate from each other to recognize how important they are to each other. So that's sort of the overall of the trilogy in my estimation. It's not the log lines of each of them, but that's finally, and I should say that's finally where we get into the heads of the actual band members. We spend the first two books in single POV of outsiders getting progressively closer to the band, and then by the time we actually get into a band member's head, the band is over. Success is fleeting.
Yeah. And I think, especially with book 3 as well, like it's not only learning what they're like apart, but they're all kind of having to come to this understanding of what role does music have in our lives now?
Yes.
It's like, well, what role does the art that made us sick have in our lives? And how do we kind of reclaim that back, which is definitely a huge part in book 3. I tell you, this book series, rereading it the other week, like, what an emotional fucking roller coaster. But still extremely satisfying. For as much as I was stressed out and anxious, like, this is where the genre of romance is so comforting because I know it's going to be fine. Especially in Code Red. Like, for me, Code Red is, like, the most anxiety-inducing because I feel like I have a front seat to Maddox's anxiety.
Yes.
And then, like, his breakdown, which I definitely want to talk about. Like, I felt like my chest was hurting throughout that entire, like, resolution. And then you're like, okay, no, it's fine. Like, Roscoe's got it. And then you get into the next book with Steve and Jeremy. You're like, oh my God, physical safety. He is in so much trouble. Somebody is going to get hurt, but it's okay. And then Codename, you're like, oh my God, the yearning, but it's okay to be together. I love pining so much. But like it's like that meme, emotional damage the entire way through this series. But thank God for the genre, because it uplifted a little bit the reading experience. Because I don't overly love angst, even if I know it's going to like turn out well. But I also found this series kind of fucks with the conventions of rockstar romance in a really fun way that I definitely want to discuss with you.
I have so much to say about this.
Okay, where do you want to start? We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have emotions.
We did a whole episode last year with Jessica Topper about rockstar romance and the appeal of rockstar romance. And Jessica was like right in the sweet spot of early rockstar blow up romance. So, you know, the Stage Dive series by Kylie Scott came out from 2013 to 2016. Jessica's Louder Than Love came out in 2015. And then Kristen Callahan's VIP series came out 2015 to 2018. I think those are about the numbers. So we'll give or take, right? And so this was still a time where, like, yes, people knew that the music industry was problematic. Like, we'd seen TLC declaring bankruptcy because they made zero money, even though Waterfalls was number 1 on the charts. We'd seen the Backstreet Boys suing their manager because they didn't get any of the royalties of their money. But we didn't really, like... We as a culture were not as institutionally skeptical as we are now. And so, especially Stage Dive, that kind of first breakout 2013 hit, was like... Isn't fame amazing? And don't we all wish we could date rock stars? And wow, what a life that this person was plucked from obscurity. And especially the first book, which I think is Lick. She was, you know, they got married in Vegas and then she gets sort of pulled into this world and it's this insta-love connection. And then she's the normie and she gets criticized, but don't worry because money can fix everything.
Yeah, I totally forgot I had read that series until you just mentioned it. And I was like, have I read that? And I just Googled it. And I was like, yeah, I have read those. But the one I actually read before that, it was Olivia Cunning's Sinner series, which came
I don't know
out
that one.
in
Tell me about
2010. It's extremely angsty. And for me, it shows a very dark side of the music industry because there is drug use. There is one of the main characters, I believe, his eventual love interest, like she's a stripper. Or maybe worked as an escort, but like there's physical abuse in that series. There is drug use. There is like fame is dirty and grimy and not like fun. And even the second book in the series, which I think follows the lead singer, he had a girlfriend, I think, before they were famous, and she got chewed up and ruined. And I think their book is about like their reconciliation. Like those books came out in 2010, 2011. So it's definitely been some time since I've read them.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know about that
so much sex in that series. Like there is a lot. I think that was probably at the time one of the most hardcore sex books I had ever read was that series. But I never read the series again because it was so like aggressive and like gross in a way with the dark side of rock music, which then reminds me of the movie Rockstar, which we talked about with Jessica, like the Mark Wahlberg one. And like, that's all about the dirty side of it. So the balance of the reality and the fantasy of what it means to be a rock star, to be a world famous musician, to be in a boy band. There is a lot to work with here.
There's so much like juicy things to really dive into. And I think also like Jessica really came down at an interesting time and place because she came after that. But when she chose who her rock stars were, they were like washed up has-been rock stars. They weren't at the height of their fame. They were like the Black Sabbath equivalent, but before Ozzy Osbourne joined the Osbournes, and had sort of his reawakening and public perception shift, where it was like, well, they did a lot of drugs. They had a lot of like maybe not so safe sex. They had bad reputations. And then, when the 80s came along and it became pop stars and big hair, they sort of fell into obscurity and they became has-beens. And so that's very different than what you're seeing in some of these other books of like these are rock stars at their prime or boy bands at their, I would say pop stars. We get a lot of pop stars. And then we move into like Kristen Callahan's VIP series, which is 4 books, including one for the manager, where it's a little bit less glamorized by this point. It's sort of moving into a bit of, can you have it all? Versus, wow, isn't this amazing? It's like, ooh, how do we protect ourselves and our partners? But it's never like villainizing the industry in the way that I think Atrous does. And then I think like Taylor Swift really sort of changed the narrative about how music is produced and what the expectations are for an artist. And there have certainly been other people who have come out since then, like Adele saying like, I cannot go on tour anymore. Yeah. It's just too physically, emotionally, mentally draining, not just like her vocal cords because she's a fucking goddess. Yes. But like I think we as a culture, maybe this is post-pandemic, we're like, oh, we need to actually like think about self-care and boundaries for our celebrities. Weird. Weird. They're humans with human bodies. Weird.
Yeah, the parasocial aspect of fame, I definitely think shows up in this series. Like it's a shitty parasocial relationship that essentially creates the stalker situation in Code Blue. It's one of the reasons why Maddox struggles so much with his mental health in Code Red. I think what you bring up about Taylor Swift is really apt. I think when she got back her masters, or when everybody knew that she was fighting to get her masters back, or when they got sold out to another company, I think we looked at that and said, well, an artist should own their work. And there's definitely a lot to be said about the balance between art and commerce, that art is beautiful and should be protected and artists should be compensated. But when it comes to artists, like you're familiar with Rent, the musical.
Am I familiar with Rent, the musical?
Yes, there you go. I sang a lot of it in karaoke over the weekend.
Roger, I thought you hated Rent.
I hate it, but there's one. The songs are catchy, even as much as I think they are very poorly written. That is a rant for another time. But Roger's character in that is really interesting because both he and Mark consider themselves artists, and they have this idea of art is only valuable if I am pursuing the most purest form of art. But then they don't do shit. Like Roger's thing is he's not actually writing it, and I'm sorry, he brings Mimi back to life with one of the most horribly written songs ever.
It's not even really a song. It's just like meandering guitaring.
Yeah, and Mark's big film, project, at least in the film version of Rent, it's a montage. It's not a documentary, boy. I don't know what you're doing.
It's basically just Angel, and it's like, well, she died.
There you go. But this, art and commerce, and even La La Land talks about this.
Yes.
Like, how can you survive if you think the only way to pursue art is the purest, most selfless, most altruistic version of art? Those things can't coexist. Like, unless you are a painter in Renaissance Italy and you have a patron who literally funds everything you do, like maybe that's different.
Yeah.
But when we look at boy bands, especially like, you know, having grown up in the golden era of boy bands, we saw how commoditized they were. I still think back to even the Spice Girls. The amount of Spice Girls swag I had, and the most ridiculous of that was the gum collect. Like, you bought gum and like there was stickers in the gum packages, and then you could buy a book that you would put all the stickers in. I had every single one of those things in the sticker book. My parents bought so much Spice Girls gum so I could complete my crinkly paper collection of stickers. How much money did they get from that? I don't think very much.
$0. £0.
Even now, like thinking about boy bands like One Direction, which is probably a more modern allegory for what Atrous was in terms of time period they were active, look at how much they were commoditized and how much of their image was designed to attract young girls and young women. And then what happened afterwards to them and how they came together. It's definitely something I had in mind reading all of these. I'm like, I'm so happy people are there to make sure they're okay, but also, can someone please make sure they are okay?
Yeah, and like, they're okay individually, but not institutionally. You know, it's like, yes, you have a manager who can make sure that you get fed. Yes, you have a bodyguard who makes sure you don't get shot. But is that physical safety enough?
Yeah. Like even in Code Blue, Jeremy and Steve's book, which is where the stalker comes into place, they have a whole scene in there where like a drone comes onto Jeremy's property, and it's an unregistered drone. It's like, who the hell is this? And that's bad enough. But then when they figure out that like the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth got hijacked, and like people may have been listening into things, like I already live in, you know, we live in a surveillance state, but also like to have that in your home because of your job. I am so stressed out reading that. So stressed out. And these guys have money and resources to deal with these things.
They have literally a head of security who installs the system, and then it still gets hacked.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
You can't escape it. And that's the other thing, is like, even as they're exiting, even as they're going, this isn't sustainable, I can't do this forever, let's quit while we're ahead, let's go out on top. Like, they're making what seems like the right decision for all of their health. And even then, people are like, well, I don't like that decision, so I'm just going to behave in this way that I then scare you and take autonomy over you because I can. And that's terrifying.
Yeah, I think the whole series played this really nice balance between, these are some of the most famous individuals on the face of the planet. People know them. So they have money, they have power, but really they don't have a lot because they are still beholden to their label and they want to service their fans well. Normally that is the source of tension in a lot of rock star, boy band, like musician romances, is despite how famous you are and how much power you have, you still have no power under the label for whatever reason. But what I loved about this series is, even as that is true, the members push back on that shit. Like when Maddox and Roscoe are together in their book, like normally what would happen is Roscoe as a manager would get fired and like kicked out of the label or made to work for another band. And Maddox is kind of like, no, I'm the front man for this group. I am the most famous one here. He stays. Now, the label does exert their power by making Roscoe work with other members of the band, and Maddox gets a new manager, and that's the person they ride with in the car as they travel around, etc. But Maddox is able to push back a little bit. Like, he's not fired. There's an NDA, and yes, you split us up, but he gets to keep him there. Same thing with Jeremy and Steve. When their relationship is found out and they're dealing with that, kind of the same thing happens. Jeremy's like, even if you get fired, that doesn't mean you have to leave. Because I have power in this situation, which is something I really like throughout this entire series. Is yes, they are still under the boot of the label and its expectations of them and its rules. You know, they make Roscoe sign NDAs and they make Jeremy and Steve sign like the relationship contract to protect their legal ass. But they're not fired. They're not removed from the company because Maddox, because Jeremy, because the members are able to say, where I go, he goes. And that's it.
They have
so
leverage
I do love.
because of
they
the
have some
fame,
leverage.
because of the money. If Maddox walks away or Jeremy walks away or they break up the band, then the label loses so much more than just here's a manager, here's a bodyguard we have to replace. So they do have leverage. They recognize that power, but they also have legal obligations. So there's this balance that's going back and forth. And I think by the end of Code Blue, I think the label manager is finally coming around and going, oh, I just did what I thought was the appropriate behavior based on the inputs that I knew, not the people.
Yeah, at least they're contacted the label, not the head of the label, which is, I believe, Arlo Kim. He's still an asshole.
Yeah.
But yeah, like his representative in the band. I can't remember his name offhand. But yeah, he at least is like, I can actually kind of feel for him.
Yeah.
He's there to represent the label. He's there to make sure its legal and financial ass is covered. He's just doing his job. And don't be a jackass. But at the end of the day, I'm like, he's doing his job.
And he's going based on best practices.
Yeah, we know that these guys are really in love and that there's no coercion here. He doesn't know that.
Right.
So, respect middle management. They got a shitty ass job.
Is that where we're coming down on this? Respect middle management?
I'm not respecting the head of the label. He's an asshole. But middle management who are just there, he's still working really hard. The amount of people he has to manage, man, I can feel for him. As someone who has been a middle manager and who manages large teams now, I'm like, I can call him an asshole and I can appreciate the fact that he's just trying to do his job.
It's so true. And I think that's part of what makes this series so alluring is that we do have a villain of the label, but the label is just doing what labels do. It's trying to make money. It might be commodifying these particular individuals, but it's also like selling boatloads of their albums and their merch, and it's getting them in front of 80,000 person stadiums, and it's coordinating the tour, and it's doing what the band wanted when they set out to do this. Yes, they started from music. Yes, they started as these 5 guys in their parents' garage making music and learning harmonies and doing the dance moves and all that. And they were friends first, but what they wanted was to get signed to a label so that way they could have this level of fame. And then they achieved this level of fame and it's like, well, what's the trade-off? What's the cost? What's the opportunity that we have and what's the opportunity cost that we have to pay for the money and the fame and the notoriety and the influence, right? Because people are loving their albums. It's not just, oh, I'm really rich now. It's, I wrote this music and 80,000 people a night are singing it back to me because they love what I put out into the world. And there's ego and there's creativity and there's pride and it's all wrapped up in this experience.
And our Walker, I think, created a lot of safety for these characters by making their partners be related to the band.
Yes.
Because they were present. I've often said this about people like Taylor Swift. I've said this about Hudson Williams and Connor's story with Heated Rivalry. When I see famous people that I like and they don't seem like absolute dirtbags, like horrible people, I hope they have the best friends around them. I hope they have the best publicist. I hope they have the best assistant, the best agent, the best PR team, because they need to be supported because everybody else around them is going to want something from them. So with Maddox, I'm so grateful that he had Roscoe literally in the trenches with him when he's breaking down in hotel rooms or backstage or literally in the big climactic moment of the story when Maddox has like a panic attack breakdown on stage. Roscoe is literally the one that runs on stage and pulls him out of it in front of 80,000 people. Or when all the band members get like heat stroke because they're performing in some hot area.
Rio, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, like literally pulling him off. And I liked that literally he got to act as a wall and support network. And then Steve, literally, he's a bodyguard for Jeremy. And that is his job, literally to act like a wall or a barrier to people who would hurt. And that's what I think really added to that sense of like psychological safety, physical safety, that made it possible for me to still enjoy the book, even as heavy shit was happening on page. Because I knew they had that person, they had that construct, they had that structure literally next to them or on top of them or inside them.
No, I love that you specifically called out psychological safety. Because we've been talking about mental health, we've been talking about burnout, we've been talking about exhaustion, we've been talking about diabetes and, management of chronic conditions. And the psychological safety is a really important thing for, I'm just going to say, for like the romance genre. Right?
Agreed.
And I think that there are a lot of books right now that are sort of touching mental health and being very careful about how they touch mental health, because the psychological safety is such an important factor in this. It's not, oh, I was really traumatized as a child and then I had sex with this person and his penis saved me.
I work, just by virtue of my job, I work with a lot of companies who work one-on-one with clients, or they have direct client relationships. And a lot of times their work, they're talking about vulnerable subjects. They're not only talking about money in your business, which when you're self-employed is extremely personal. They're talking about your relationships. They're talking about your mental health. And I'm always challenging them on, okay, great. Love all of this, but how are you creating psychological safety? And they're like, well, I'm a safe space. I'm like, awesome. How are you a safe space? How are you proving you are a safe space? And how are you demonstrating to others that you are a safe space and then following up on that shit? Because you can't just put on a billboard, we create safe spaces for people to be themselves. I'm like, that if that's all you say you do, you're not. Actually, it is extremely likely that you will cause a lot of harm if you're not thinking about this. And I just love seeing brains blow up when I just keep saying, how do you do it? How do you do it? How do you create psychological safety? How do you do that? And again, it's definitely inherent in the romance genre. There is that sense of psychological safety that this is a romance. We know it's going to end up. I don't know if you have seen this shit go down on Threads or Reddit the last couple days.
Probably not. Let's be honest.
True. I'm on social media way too much. I'm the 2 a.m. ADHD doom scroller. It's true. Even if I have limits on my phone, it's a thing, y'all.
I was watching Sweet Home Alabama at 2 o'clock this morning. So
there's
thank
a lot
you
of
for saving me from the doom scrolling.
You're welcome. I sacrifice myself on this altar for you. There is a complaint right now. There's a new complaint every day in book world.
Oh my gosh.
That this author, and I'm not going to share the name or the title because it's not my book. You get to write whatever you want. But the criticism of that book is it's advertised as a romance. And it turns out, though, the book ends with the main male character's funeral. So he's been dead the entire time, apparently, because I think they're like the first chapter is like you think everything's happy and then there's like a flashback, but it leads up and then you find out the first chapter is actually at his funeral or something like that. The crux of the matter is the main male character is dead and that is how the book ends. And people are like, wow, this is not a romance. And the fact that the author is characterizing it as such is actually extremely triggering and inappropriate. And I was like, I'm not here to argue how you're going to categorize your book. At the end of the day, it's none of my business. But I can see where a lot of people are coming from just in general, not just for this book specifically. But if knowing that it's a romance does create a little bit of that safety for the reader to be like, it's okay. It's okay. It will all end up okay. Even in dark romance, and I am not a huge consumer of dark romance. I read cozy dark, where only bad people get hurt.
Cozy dark, cozy monster, dark. Cozy
Thank
murderers.
Only bad things only happen to bad people. But that there is still that definitely present here. Part of
cozy
that is cozy psychopaths, cozy vigilantes. I just want to cozy up in them.
Get your burrito, get your little blanket.
Yes, I'm going to blanket burrito with my emotional support vodka or in my case it would be emotional support tequila. I'm not a vodka drinker. But yes, the genre gives it, which is step one, but also the characters around these characters display it.
Yes.
So that when Maddox has his breakdowns or he is vulnerable in front of Roscoe, it makes sense that he would feel free to do that when he won't do it in front of anyone else. When Jeremy, who up until this book was pretty sure he was straight, not only is dealing with a stalker, but also the awakening tinglies in his groiny and chesty bits for Steve. And then like Blake and Luke, they have years of a relationship to kind of push back on to come to their like mutual relationship because they're so much yearning. But I feel okay about it because I know what I'm in for.
And I think also, especially with Blake and Luke, they are each other's psychological safety nets and support networks. And they have both been in the same trenches for so long. Not just in the fame space, but they were best friends before that. And so to recognize that they need this separation because the recognition of love is only one-sided,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you're losing the psychological safety. You're not just losing your best friend. And that's the thing that really resonated with me in Codename is like, this was more than just like, oh, you're codependent best friends and both of you are dating other people, but you're still dependent on each other. And like, it was a weird setup that I loved, especially when one was dating the other one's sister. Okay.
Yeah.
But I can't remember which way it went. Was it Blake dating Luke's sister or Luke dating Blake's sister? Their names are so similar that my brain just
Balake
like...
Luke.
Balake Luke.
Yes, I don't remember offhand.
But the point being, you know, they were each other's person.
They were also each other's home. And that was
Yeah.
also a big plot point in there, that when the split happens and, you know, they're like, well, I cannot remember who's who.
I think Blake is the one who like moved into Luke's house.
Yes, and Luke is the one that runs away to Mexico because he's been in love with Blake the whole time. I also think that is it. So like Blake has this really big party house on the beach, and he's like, that doesn't feel like home. Being with Luke feels like home. So that when Luke leaves him and nobody tells him where he is, his home is gone. Not just emotionally, but he doesn't feel physically comfortable being in that space anymore. He's like, I need to find some place to live. And I have this beach house, which is not who I want to be, or where I want to be. It's not the life I want, but I also can't go to the place that I have, by accident, I guess, been cultivating with Luke. So the loss of safety comes with loss of home for them, which is why I love when they do get together, they do decide to get a vacation place in Mexico, and they decide to get a house together, like a new one, not going back to the same house they were sharing before this big accidental breakup. But they're like, we need some place that's just for us, that we choose together, that has none of this emotional baggage that is back here. Exactly. The cleansing of the space. We are saging our emotional space.
That doesn't have the memories of bringing other people home. That doesn't have the memories of laying alone without each other and knowing that you're in a different room. That doesn't have all of that trauma. It's trauma. Like, they were psychologically supporting each other, but they were also traumatizing each other, especially Blake to Luke, without realizing it. And Luke really did have to cut the toxicity because he didn't want to ruin everything long term, because that was his person and he needed to change his own internal sort of mechanisms. But how do you do that if you're always with that person? Like, it was such a beautifully difficult situation that N.R. Walker came up with.
Yeah, and I think a really smart decision to have one of the characters say, I'm just going to remove myself. Essentially, I'm going to go cold turkey on you and on our relationship, which that is hard as fuck for most things, to go cold turkey on something. But when it has the emotional depth of a relationship and a complicated relationship, there's a lot of things on top of it layering on, like the band and their years of friendship. And I love how, especially in Codename, music being the issue but also the salvation as like a main theme of that, because it turns out Blake is kind of resentful of the facts that Maddox essentially put an end to the band. Like, he agrees that we were done in that iteration, like the touring, like how many of them were in physiotherapy, how many of them needed surgery, how many of them needed therapy after that, and who just needed to sleep for so much time. And by the way, there's a fifth member of the band named Wes, who eventually marries
straight.
Amy, and they have kids. He's straight. He's fine. But Blake feels resentful in a way that they said it's either 5 of us or it's none of us. And that's another anxiety for Maddox in his book, is the labels like, you could go by yourself. What if you release this as a solo artist? Poke, 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 poke. And he goes, no. It's 5 of us or it's none of us.
Yeah.
So I love that Blake and Luke were also able to not only reestablish their relationship in the new way, to establish what home and safety meant, but they also got to reassess and redefine what music meant to them. And they are pretty much the only members who take back a public persona by the end of the series. They're going on late night. They're like, we have a production company. We are writing. We have music. We're performing. They get to perform at an airport randomly on a piano. And that was super fun.
I loved that scene so much.
Yes. But like, I like how they are also able to claim that back at the end of it. And I think it's true for all 3 books, this idea of reclaiming safety and reclaiming home. And for Blake and Luke, music was such a big part of that they're able to take that resentment of having it end the way that it did and then do more with it in a way that still is satisfying.
And I think it also like pulls back to why they got into it in the first place, which is the love of the music, the creativity, the production, not necessarily the performance, but the creation as the core goal. And then they're able to produce their own music, their own duets, but also bring in new artists and be able to support new people through that process and hopefully provide more of that psychological safety for their new people who they're signing to their label or their production, which feels much more supported than what they went through, 5 years prior. I also saw a lot of correlations between Codename by N.R. Walker and the Fandom book by Eden Finley.
Yeah.
So, Eden had the Pop Star series, a 4-book series with the 5 boy band members. And the 3rd book in the series is Fandom. That is when Denver and Mason get together. So it has that similar tone of these were 2 members of the band that always had feelings for each other. When they broke up, they sort of separated and now they're coming back together. And one of them had a queer awakening and the other one knew that he was in love with him the whole time. And so there was a very similar plot setup, but I think it was done very differently in that book because it was... the goal of the whole series is the Harvey character coming and saying, we need to get back together. And the goal of the series is reunion, not creativity and new identity. And so to have this sort of external character from book 1 saying the goal is reunion, and now we need to go up into the cabin and find Mason and drag him back out. And all of us need to do it together. And the reason that he left is because he has these unrequited feelings for one of our band members. Surprise! Like, it's very different the way that it's executed. And I thought it was interesting that both of these sort of boy band destruction, but also potential new identities coming out of that touched on this. But I think N.R. Walker got it so much grittier and also like more satisfying because they went to a darker place.
What I'm hearing you say though is that every boy band just needs to have a cabin.
Yeah. Or some sort of retreat.
Yeah, and that I love how Maddox essentially created that for the guys. In the first book they go away. Is it Roscoe's family?
Yeah, up in Vermont.
That they go to.
Because he has his like breakdown in New York City and Roscoe just like puts him in the car and drives 8 hours.
He's like, we're going right now to this like area.
You're meeting my family. Surprise!
By the way.
Meet the parents.
And then they eventually get to create like this sanctuary for them where there's cabins for everybody. So they get their private space. And one of the cabins is also a studio. And I love this idea of sanctuary because it does go back to safety. It does go back to this concept of home, which when you are a musician who's in a different city every single night, home is a transient place, but sanctuary is something that's very difficult to attain. And I don't know what it's like to travel that much. Like I used to travel for work and I was so jealous of my dad when I was a kid. I'm like, oh my God, you got to like there was one year in my dad's career, he traveled 300 days of that year. He was like platinum status on several airlines and it was for work. And I used to think, oh my God, that's so cool. You've been to Japan, you've been to Costa Rica, you've been to Chile, you've been to Europe, you've been to South Africa, you've been to all these places. And then when I started doing it for work, I was like, oh no, I'm just in a hotel room. I go from the airport to the hotel room to a boardroom to the airport again. This is not as glamorous as I thought it was. So I can only understand in the smallest of ways what it must be like for touring performers, not only musicians, but like Broadway type performances, like theater performances, musical performances. Like, holy shit. I'm already exhausted thinking about it.
I know, right?
That's so much peopling and so much travel and it's different beds and it's different food and it's different time zones. Like, shit.
So many hotel rooms that just start to blend together. I think about like when musicians get out and they're like, we love you, New York. And it's like, how do they even remember what city they're in?
Because there's a Post-it note.
A prompter.
No, literally I've seen this before from a friend who did a touring theater show. There's often a sign backstage or there's a sign taped to the front of the stage that says, you are in Boston. So that when they say, hello, good evening, thank you. Literally the city is there or they're being told in their ears.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I'd be like, hello, city.
Hello,
what's up,
city?
people?
That's my little bare naked ladies moment of the day.
Yeah.
I'm to ask a question. I think I know what your answer is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Just to set up next episode.
I love it. Do it.
Is code word a slow burn or is it a second chance?
I don't think it's second chance because they weren't together explicitly in the first place.
That is also how I read this.
Yeah.
We'll talk next episode about the framework for second chance.
Yeah, it's definitely friends to lovers. It's definitely slow burn. But I wouldn't call it second chance because even though they had this very codependent relationship, you often have stories where characters are made fun of, like, oh, you're just like an old married couple just with no sex. Like, to me, that's still not a second chance because there wasn't anything that happened. Now, if maybe in a different story, if there had been like a kiss in their youth, I might consider that getting into the realm of second chance.
Okay, so Him by Elle Kennedy and Serena Bowen. Second chance or friends to lovers?
Oh my gosh. I don't remember the intricacies of the plot.
Okay, so it was they hooked up. They had like a blowjob situation in the
in the hockey camp.
Yeah, but it was a pact. They were never in a relationship. They just sort of hooked up, and then one of them, I'm gonna say Wes and Jamie, was that their names? One of them freaked out and left. But they were never technically together, but they were best friends.
I think I would probably put that into the realm of second chance because they knew each other. It wasn't like a hookup that they ran away from. Like, they had an established relationship. It wasn't romantic and it wasn't sexual prior to that moment. So that would probably edge more towards second chance for me. Okay. I feel like this is a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Did they fuck? Did they know? And put it together.
Okay. We'll build that into the framework. And also, question for listeners. I don't want you to answer this until next week, Nikki.
Start thinking.
Is heated rivalry a slow burn or a second chance?
Oh, I already know my answer.
I think it's not a second chance. But everything that I'm reading when I was preparing for the second chance episode was like, heated rivalry. Look at this second chance. And I'm like, fuck you, that's not a second chance.
Yeah, well, no.
We'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
All right, so Atrous.
Yes.
Atrous, what did you ship the most?
This is going to sound like a really awkward ship, but I love the emotional breakdowns. In terms of the writing, because the payoff was so good, I loved rereading Code Red because it's probably been about a year and a half since I had read Code Red. Maddox's breakdown on stage was so well written. And then Jeremy's the attack in the hospital or in like the rehab center when they were working on his diabetes and like what happened to Steve, what happened to the other guys. And then Blake and Luke, the showing up, it's when Blake goes to Luke's house and finds all of the memories kind of spread out. Oh, and he just breaks down in the middle of the photos. Then like the guys come in and he sees Maddox and he's like, fuck you. You know where I am. And I love how the sister comes back and is like, you guys are torturing him. What the fuck? But it's all of these like individual, like where the drama and the danger in a way gets dialed up to fucking 11. It's so well written because it makes me, I almost feel like I'm up on my tiptoes when I'm reading it. And then the payoff is really great. So you're
holding your breath, so you have to keep reading.
Even though I know what happens. Because I've read all of them multiple times. Yeah, I think those are probably what I ship the most is like those breakthrough moments in each of them because they're emotional as fuck. And they wring you out.
Isn't it funny the somatic experiences that we have just from like reading a romance and how
it's crazy.
We're able to embody that experience without it being it can be like emotionally triggering but also emotionally cathartic in a lot of ways to work through it with them without being unsafe for us to go through that ourselves.
Truth.
God, I love romance. I mean, we talked in episode 1 about cupcakes and how we want our cupcakes, but I think it's so much deeper than that. It's about being able to safely explore emotions and relationships without needing to be vulnerable ourselves.
Yes, I love the safety bet. So what are you shipping the most about Atrous as a series?
I think it's the same thing, you know, like I love the rock star. I love the experience of it. I love a little bit of like that grittier skepticism, but it really does come down to the emotional devastation and the way that I felt still supported and held as a reader. You know, I've written a lot of mental health into the book that's coming out next month. And it's like, I wanted to have that same experience of these characters are going through shit, but they're supported. They're getting the help they need. You know, this isn't somebody in a vacuum. And at the end of it, they'll end up better than they were, but we have to go through the process to get there. And N.R. Walker doesn't shy away from difficult situations, from pain, from mental health struggles, from reality, right? And I think that there are authors who are safe and comfort reads, and they're intentionally in that lane. They don't push these boundaries. That's not part of their brand voice, and that's okay. Like, totally okay. Like,
we love it.
Not every author needs to go there, but N.R. Walker does. They. This author, N.R. Walker, threads the needle so cleanly that it can go to a difficult place, but you never feel unsafe as a reader, and that is such a hard thing to accomplish. So yeah, for me, it's the craft of psychological safety as an author, as the characters are going through vulnerable situations.
We're talking about boy bands, and then we're like emotional well-being and mental health. Before we get into the question of what we're shipping this week and talking about what's coming up next week, a gentle reminder, head on over to your podcast provider of choice, leave us a rating, leave us a review, subscribe. It is the most helpful thing that you can do for us, and we would really totes appreciate. That being said, Meg, what are you shipping this week?
So, preview of next week, we're going to be talking all things second chance romance, and I decided to go back and read a second chance romance that I haven't read in like 8 years, and it is Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas. We'll talk about it in next episode, but I gotta ship it this week to sort of like preview that, because holy shit, I forgot how much I love this book. Have you read Again the Magic?
It doesn't sound familiar. I've read a lot of Lisa Kleypas's catalog, so I'll have to look it up to see if I've read it. It doesn't strike me as familiar.
Childhood friends who fell in love with each other, but she is the daughter of an earl and he is a stable boy. And so once their romance is discovered, he gets sent off, banished from the house by the earl. She gets injured in a fire and has scars now. Oh,
it's a Wallflowers book. Yes, I have read this one.
I think it's a Ravenel's book, but yeah.
It's Wallflowers book 0, according to Goodreads. But yes, I have read this.
So he goes off to America. He makes a small fortune in like railroads because Lisa Kleypas times. And then he comes back and he sort of he's trying to get revenge. He's trying to like revenge fuck her, to be like, well, I'll have you however. And then he realizes that she never married because she's always been in love with him. But at the same time, her sister is also falling in love with his business partner. So we get like dual love stories where one is a second chance romance and one is like a love after loss romance. And it's just like threaded so beautifully, and it does such a great job. And it still has that like Lisa Kleypas alpha hero that you expect from a book that was released in 2015. But like, so fucking good. So going back in time.
I love that.
To Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas.
I just looked it up on Google to see if I'd read it, and a Reddit thread showed up, and I just need to read this comment for everyone because it's making me giggle. Someone says, in her books, nobody is ever able to function in the presence of a hot person of the opposite sex without getting hard, wet, or their nipples contracting immediately and their bosoms heaving.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
You can honestly, like their brains just like it's sort of like when you get angry and your prefrontal cortex just like shuts down, except it's there's somebody hot in the room, zoop, lid flipped, done.
Love it.
All reasoning gone. That's so Lisa Kleypas. Nikki, what are you shipping this week?
For my birthday, my most excellent sister-in-law got us tickets to go see Anne Juliet performed in Toronto.
What a perfect Atrous to like
it's literally
boy banding.
It's boy band. For those who are unfamiliar with the show, it is a jukebox musical. And a jukebox musical is a musical that uses already written songs and fits it into the plot. So Rock of Ages, Mamma Mia, Jersey Boys, these are all jukebox musicals. And this one is the music of Max Martin. So it's Backstreet Boys, it's Katy Perry, it's Kelly Clarkson, it's Celine Dion, there's Bon Jovi in there. And the framing device is essentially William Shakespeare and his wife Anne Hathaway are arguing over the end of Romeo and Juliet. And Anne Hathaway says, I'm going to take over writing this ending. What if she doesn't kill herself after Romeo dies? What happens to her? So it's very much a story of female empowerment. And what does Juliet's life look for? It is hysterical.
So good.
It's so funny. The music is great. It was really hard not to sing along in your seats throughout the entire show. I was definitely humming under my breath until you get to the finale. Then they're like, everybody sing and dance. And I was like, fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a fabulous musical. The Toronto cast is absolutely fantastic. I want outfits from this show, like Juliet's big finale dress with the glitter and the really puffy skirt. I was like, yes, I'll take it in 3 different colors, please. And
how was that not your birthday gift from Jen? Come on, Jen.
I was like, hello, please give me things. But it was a fabulous show. Such a great cast. The production design was brilliant. The music was so much fun. And where is it? I think it's in the other room. I fell victim to their merch store. Oh. I bought a glittery pink quill pen for far too much money. Yeah. And I wasn't going to buy it because I was like,
was it a $30 pen?
It was a $35 pen.
And that's Canadian
$2 to make. But I needed a glittery pen. So, and Julie, and I started looking up the choreography because I want to learn the choreography to the finale, which is To Roar, which I don't love as a song, but the choreography is phenomenal. And I found some videos where the choreographers are teaching you the entire routine. So come back in a couple weeks. Maybe I will know the entire dance routine.
I went to see this as a matinee performance with my mother. And the matinee performances definitely run much older than the evening performances. And so my favorite part of seeing Anne Juliet in a theater where I was probably in the 10% youngest end of the spectrum was the moment where I could hear the audience recognizing the songs at least 40 seconds into the songs.
Whereas I'm sure with you, at least with our group, like me, Bex, and my friend Nat came too, we knew within the first 2 beats of the song, we're like, yes, Backstreet Boys! Like,
I would hear the downbeat and be like, boom, here's the thing. We started out as friends, and I'm like, okay, they're going into Since You've Been Gone. They made it through the entire verse before it was Since You've Been Gone.
And they went, oh, okay.
And finally people were like, oh! And I'm like, guys, how... Oops, I Did It Again, they got on the first hit, but everything else, they were like taking, and they didn't recognize that when they named a character May, that it was just going to set up the it's going to be May moment.
Oh my God, y'all, when I tell you this moment, yes, because yes, there is a character named May. They're amazing. I want their outfit from the first act. It was like this sparkly purple jumpsuit with this like kind of cool vine tiara on it.
And it had like a little bit of so like a bondage thing that I've seen you wear before, where it like sort of
such a fan of May's outfit. But yeah, when the whole May and Frankie song of like, it's gonna be May and pointing to May, I lost my shit. And there were so many people in the audience who did not get it.
Didn't get it.
But me and my friends, being the millennials that we are, hysterical crying.
Yeah.
I was laughing so hard with that. And then like Teenage Dream with Daddy Du Bois and Nurse.
Yes.
Crying with how hysterical that actor was. Du Bois Band being the stand-in for like Backstreet Boy. Like,
yeah.
This is a fucking great show. If you are able to see it, please go see it live. It's a fantastic show. If you can't see it live, then listen to the cast recording. It's so much fun. It's so recognizable. I had so a fantastic
much fun.
Time.
My mom turned to the woman next to her intermission, and she's like, "What are you thinking about the show?" And the woman was like, "So when are they going to play the songs from our generation?" And I'm like, "Did you not read anything about the movie?"
They're Max Martin songs. That's how they get the rights to all of them, because Max Martin did all of them.
Exactly, because Max Martin wants another payday on top of these 14-song paydays. Come on.
Yeah, and also the guy who played Romeo in ours was so good. He was such a dweeb, which was perfect. I don't know what your Romeo was like, but he was...
No, like, our Frankie was a dweeb. Our Romeo was like actually kind of hot.
Oh, ours were both dweebs. It was great. Like Frankie had glasses and like, but the guy who played Romeo was like skinny as a bean, big pompadour hair. Like when they call him a douche in the show, he looked like the dweebiest douche fuckboy you've ever seen. Yeah. He was perfect.
He was a little Twinkie in our show.
Perfect. Yeah, he was a little Twinkie in ours too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Greatly enjoyed it. But Anne Juliet is what I'm shipping this week. All right, that's it for us this week. If you would like to support the show, you can do it for free. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show on your podcast provider of choice. Tell a friend. Word of mouth is a fantastic way to share the love and bring us other soulmates. Follow us on social media. We are at First Dates and Soulmates on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you've got a little bit of money you would like to send our way, you can check out our merch store. It is in the show notes by the time this episode comes out. I will have added some new merch to the store, so be sure to go check it out. You can check out our Amazon storefront if you'd like to check out some of the books we've talked about. And you can subscribe to the show on Substack. Do it for 1 month. Do it for many months. Up to you. We're just so happy that you are here. We love you very much, soulmates. Coming up next week, as Meg said, we are diving deep into second chance romance. We will see you next week. Bye!